Clouds are beautiful tonight. We had a lot of snow today. You wouldn't know it by looking at the fields, but clouds are a fascinating part of nature. They're awesome to watch. The gods of olden times were the storm riders, the storm gods, Baal in the Ugaritic pantheon of the gods. I recently received several books from Ugaritic materials about Baal and Elohim and Ishtar and all the different gods and goddesses. You know, Yahweh became one of those gods. He was actually in the original pantheon from the Hebrew conception of things. He actually became a storm god, a storm rider, a cloud rider. That was Baal's epithet for quite a while. His epithet was the Baal the storm god, Baal the storm rider. The Hebrews kind of took the Ugaritic conception of the council of the gods and their gods as storm gods and stuck it onto their deity, Yahweh. This doesn't mean Yahweh was a false god. It doesn't mean that the Hebrews were full of pagan ideas. They were definitely influenced from the Ugaritic materials, though. The idea of the council of the gods, the married gods. Mark S. Smith, in his book The Origins of Monotheism, described the idea of the original conception of the deities were as an eternal family, and the earthly family took its place as the earthly counterpart of the heavenly family of the gods. The famous sons of El were the Yahweh and Baal, and several of those deities were actually the sons of El. There were 70 of them, and they were allotted to the nations according to Deuteronomy 32. They were all cloud riders and storm riders. So it's kind of fun to look at the clouds and think about the gods, isn't it? The gods were the masters and lords of the heavens, the skies, and the earth. That was the conception of the deities and their powers. It's fascinating to read about. They were the gods of the light and the darkness, the heavens and the earth. Yahweh originally, of course, was conceived of with the combination of name with Elohim. That's why it translates as the Lord God in the Bible. And of course, he became known as Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of the hosts. Yahweh Sabaoth Hashemayim, the Lord of the hosts of heaven. And some of those hosts were the stars, the clouds, the rain, and also the sons of God, the council. And it's spoken of in the Psalms quite often. It's in Zechariah. It's in several different areas in the Hebrew Bible. Actually, at the very beginning of the creation, he talks about building, creating, and bringing forth the hosts of heaven. And with the Ugaritic materials that I've got now, I'll be posting some really nifty, interesting ideas from the Ugaritic materials on the way that Yahweh is conceived and the parallels in the cultural milieu of the ancient Near East. That is extremely interesting. And the Israelites were not alone. They were not alone. There were enormous influences, interesting political influences, fascinating religious and cultural influences all over the ancient Near East that the Hebrew Bible picked up on. And I think it's fascinating to view the parallels and the scholarship with the with this fascinating doctrine, this doctrine that Yahweh, the idea of monotheism was not that Yahweh was the only deity. That's not the idea of monotheism. Michael Heiser's doctoral dissertation on that is enormously significant and interesting, because the monotheism, the Shema, Hear Israel, the Lord our God is the Lord alone. He is their Lord. He is their storm god. Yahweh would fight the Israelites' battle with the weather, as well as with all the hosts of heaven. But monotheism was not the idea in the ancient Hebrew pantheon. Yahweh was their God to worship. That's true. Absolutely. No question about that. But he wasn't the only ruling deity. He was for Israel. And that's the fascination of studying the ancient Hebrew and the Greek conceptions of the deities. And so I like to come out into nature and enjoy the beauties of nature and contemplate the mighty works of God and realize and recognize that we live in a fantastic time. We live in a fantastic place to be able to enjoy and see and understand the solemnities of creation, the power of the deities, the glory of the fabulous world we live in, the magnificent scriptures we have, with the Ugaritic parallels, of course. Ugarit is one of many ancient literatures that had a huge influence. The Egyptians had an influence on the Israelites also. No question. I mean, they were in Egypt for 400 years as slaves, But this theme of the deities, the gods, being the storm gods, the cloud riders, Yahweh specifically mentioned that in the cloud rider, as the God who would fight the battles of Israel. It's quite a conception. It's quite fascinating to look out at the clouds, come out after a storm and see the magnificent shapes, endless variety, infinite beauty, astonishing power of this magnificent planet we live on. Fabulous scriptures to read and study and ponder as we live our lives. It's a great thing. I like it. And I love coming out here and sharing it with you guys. So there's another Idaho sunset with sort of a interesting discussion on the gods and the council of the gods and the storm riders, the cloud riders, recognizing that it was not a unique epithet of Yahweh at all, but it was definitely one of the ancient concepts. And we've got that in our scriptures. Fun to read. Fun to look at and see and read.